Nikki Bush is a well-known author, parenting expert and commentator on women's issues, whom you may have seen on TV because she makes regular appearances. But during this Women's Month, she's concentrating on empowering women to take care of themselves and their finances. That's something close to Nikki's heart after the death of her husband, who was a victim of crime in 2017. We can speak now to Nikki Bush, who's joining us this afternoon. A very good afternoon to you, Nikki. Good to see you. So, Women's Month, and you're focusing on women and money. What's brought this focus about?
Absolutely, Tembekile, because without financial freedom, we have no choice freedom. And there comes a time in everybody's life where you're thrown a curved ball. Maybe you reach a crossroads in your life. Maybe, like me, your partner passes away. Maybe you get divorced. Maybe you want to switch lanes in terms of careers. And what have you actually done in terms of investing in yourself as an asset to give yourself that financial freedom and those choice options? And I think women tend to leave that to other people to do. And then when they really want to make those moves, they're stuck.
And what are the main moves that a person should be making at this time when you consider that money is possibly tighter than ever for most people?
Absolutely. So what I find with women, and it was the same with me before I became a single mother, the sole breadwinner through widowhood, is that I left most of the finances to my husband. Yes, I earned money and I was making profits, but profits went to paying off credit cards at the end of the month. If we don't prioritize our own investments, our own financial plan, it just won't happen. So firstly, we need to create a financial plan, and we need to buy the share, not the handbag. So often when you make some money, you buy stuff. Now, you can buy the stuff, but you also need to be putting something away. And we need to be preparing to pay our future selves. We are going to live for a long time. We have decent health care. If you're on a medical aid, we're going to live longer and work for longer. But at some point, you will have to pay yourself when you're not working anymore. And what are you doing to prepare for that eventuality? And so we need to use the power and the discipline of the debit order to put money into investments every month, even if you start small. Make sure you're putting money away that you don't touch, because compound interest, of course, is the magical thing. As women, we work very hard. We're prepared to put in the hours for our money, but what about learning to make money work for you? And it's not to pay what's left at the end of the month into investments. It's to put money into investments up front. And as I said, it doesn't have to be big to begin with, but it's a mindset shift.
I want to pick up on mindset shift, and it doesn't have to be big, because for most people, as I was alluding to earlier, when you talk about saving, people ask, what can I save?
Absolutely. So, if it starts off being a few $100, make sure it's the same amount that goes off every month. When you can afford to make it $500, make it 500. When you can afford to make it 1,000, make it 1,000, until you can get to that maximum tax-free amount of 3,000 Rand a month. And from there, you open up another investment pot later on. But it's the discipline of knowing you are actually putting something away for yourself, for your future, that is so critical, because the interesting thing is that you usually land up earning enough to cover that, because it's part of your budget. And then we also need to shift our mindset around negotiability. Women are often asked for discounts when they pitch for work, when they put in proposals, when they put in quotations. Before the quotation, the ink is even dry, a woman is asked for a discount. Not necessarily so with a man. And so we have to start understanding the game that's being played out there. And if you are on your way up the management ladder and you're starting to get offers, which include both a salary and perhaps share options, etc., a woman generally takes the very first offer on the table. A man does not. A man says, thank you very much. Let me take it home, think about it. I'll get back to you, and usually comes back with a counter offer. So women need to learn how to negotiate for themselves, as well as not being so negotiable when they're at the negotiating table.
That, however, will also require a broader societal shift, because if you're sitting across the desk from someone with not just buying power, but the power to give you employment, and their mindset hasn't shifted, even if you are going for what you want, it can become difficult.
Yes, so, I think what's very important is that women need to hear from other women who have gone before them. And I know Women's Day, we tend to commemorate what happened back in the 60s with the women marching on the union buildings for equal rights under the apartheid conditions. And while Women's Day is about remembering those women who went before us, we also need to focus on today's woman who is walking before us, carving out a new path, who is facing these very obstacles and climbing over them and succeeding through them despite, the gender inequality. And one also has to think about the median gender pay gap that's between 23 and 35% for women doing the same work as men. And be aware of that. Find out what's happening in your particular industry. Are women being paid less than men? It's a good question because right now in some industries, men are eating our lunch. So just being awake and aware, I think, is half the battle won. Of course, we have institutional and systemic changes that need to take place. But if women aren't awake and aware, then what happens is that we continue living out scripts that perhaps no longer serve us. And these scripts need challenging. They need changing. And it's not just about pointing fingers out there and say, you make the changes. We also make the changes we need to make the changes within us to change our expectation of how society will treat us.
Just to round off then, when we talk about savings and finances, often the conversation can be somewhat preachy. People feel ashamed to come forward and say, well, I don't have savings, because when you sit and speak to an expert, for example, there's judgment to say, well, you're 40 years old. Why don't you have a savings plan or an account set up already? How do we remove that element from the discussion around finances so that people aren't afraid to take that first step?
Well, I think women traditionally don't ask enough questions because we don't want to be seen as stupid. But you know what? We will never level up if we don't ask questions. So make a list of those questions. Find people to talk to. Don't just speak to one person. Speak to a few people, because then you can tease out those nuggets of information. And that wisdom is out there, and there are lots of people prepared to help you. But don't take the first piece of information that comes your way. Of course, everybody's selling something, so you've got to read between the lines as well. What I really enjoy is using an independent financial planner or financial advisor that are not tied to specific products, but actually are helping me to create my life plan. That's really important, that your finances tie in with your life plan. And there are also ages and stages. And Tembekile, I never believed it, but my financial advisor told us when our kids were teenagers, right now your kids are really expensive, but there'll come a time when they will leave home and suddenly you'll have extra money again. And you know what? It happens. So be prepared for the different ages and stages and seasons that come along. Some are going to be more expensive than others, but you need to keep on with the discipline of putting something away. At some stages it will be less, and at other stages it's going to be more. But it's the discipline and the habit of investing in yourself, because you are your best asset. You're an asset class all of your own.
Nikki Bush, thank you so much for speaking to us. Nikki is an author, parenting expert and commentator. Thank you.